Hello. I hope you are all having a wonderful night. I'm so thrilled to be here on PSI Georgia chapter to talk about one of my favorite things, which is sleep. I am so grateful that you're joining me right now. I'm actually super flattered if you're joining me right now because I realize that tonight is the This Is Us finale and it's starting right now. So make sure your DVR is set. Just a little PSA. But in all seriousness, thank you so much for joining, and I hope you get something out of tonight. So if you have any questions as I talk, please feel free to drop them below and I'll answer them at the end. I love questions, so please feel free to ask whatever as I go through all that I want to talk about. And I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Caitlin Thompson. I live about 30 minutes north of Atlanta, born and raised in Georgia. I am the mom of an almost 2-year-old. He will be 2 in June. And I have a degree in child and family development from the University of Georgia, go Dogs. And I am also a certified pediatric sleep consultant and the owner and founder of Sweet Pea Sleep. So I'm just going to start with what is a sleep consultant. Maybe you've heard of it before, maybe not. Basically, my passion is to educate parents on good sleep routines, good sleep hygiene, and to help tired, sleep-deprived parents and children and families to get the sleep they need using gentle, responsive sleep training techniques. So that's what I do. I love it. And tonight, while I'm talking to you, I have 3 objectives. So I hope that tonight you come away from watching this with a better understanding of the importance of sleep on your physical and mental health, because it's huge and it's so important, especially for moms. So I hope you walk away with that. The second thing is I kind of want to bust through some myths surrounding sleep that maybe you've heard or maybe you think that might be getting in the way of you getting adequate sleep. The third thing is I just want to encourage you that you can get the sleep you need and give you some practical information on how to do that. So those are the 3 things that we will be talking about tonight. And first, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and my background and why I became a sleep consultant. So like I said, I have a degree in child and family development, and I've been a nanny for 10 years, over 10 years. And when I had my son, I sort of thought, like, I have this thing figured out. And when I had my son, Jackson, he was super high needs. He had just colic, silent reflux that was really hard to diagnose. He had a tongue tie, lip tie, a lot was a struggle right off the bat that I wasn't expecting. And because of all of those things, right off the bat, he wasn't a good sleeper. And when I say that, it's kind of the understatement of the year, because we were up about 9 times a night for months. So he just, because he was so colicky, because of the reflux, and then after, even once we had the reflux under control, he had kind of started his life out just in this chronic overtired cycle, having a hard time falling asleep, and he would need to be bounced on an exercise ball with the shower running to fall asleep. And we basically had to go through all these acrobatics every night to get him to sleep over and over and over through the night. So that was us. I am a formerly exhausted, sleep-deprived mom, and it really began to wear on me, and I was experiencing postpartum anxiety on top of that, and the sleep deprivation exacerbated it to really an unbearable level. My anxiety was so bad that even when he was sleeping at night, I couldn't sleep. Just imagining, a bunch of crazy scenarios. I'm sure some of you understand, what postpartum anxiety is like. One morning I woke up and told my husband, hey, just so you know, I spent $25 on Amazon at 4 in the morning because I just had to buy seatbelt cutters and window breakers because I was worried about, what would happen if I got into a car accident. And that's all I could think about all night. So I was dealing with postpartum anxiety. And then really the final straw was when my son was about 5 or 6 months old. And I actually was so sleep deprived from getting about 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night for weeks that I hallucinated. And that's kind of hard to share. But unfortunately, it's actually not. I've heard this from a lot of moms. I'm not alone in this. And that is what sleep deprivation can do to you. So that was sort of my breaking point where I was like, okay, am I going to go crazy from this? And I really have to do something about this because my mental health is important, and it's important for my son to have a healthy mom. So basically, I always thought that you either had to kind of stick with the sleep deprivation or the only route was cried out. And I felt like I couldn't do that. And so, but I started to become open to researching sleep training, and I actually found that there are a million options, basically, that would fit any parenting style on how to teach your child better sleep habits and how to sleep independently. And so I educated myself, and I bought like multiple books, read a lot. I found a method that I was comfortable with, and I sleep trained my son using a gentle method. And he was sleeping through the night quickly. And it was just a huge turning point in my life and in the life of our family. And I began to feel so passionate about telling moms that there are options and that they can do something about the sleep deprivation and that they don't have to be sleep deprived to these unhealthy levels for weeks and months and years. I started helping my friends, talking to my friends about how I did it with my son. And then I just thought, I would love to know more and to help many more moms with this because it was such a life-changing thing for our family. So I enrolled in a certification course, already had my degree in child development, like I said, and became certified, and now it's what I do, and I love it. And I feel very passionate about it. So, I wish I could say my story was rare, but I have had enough clients now to where I've heard so many stories. One, for instance, I had a client who would drive around at night at 10, 11 o'clock, midnight, and got in a car accident. And it was because her son couldn't fall asleep except for in the car at night. And so they were just doing, whatever they could and driving around late at night. Eventually, they got into a car accident, and that was kind of their final straw. I had a client who went to the emergency room just shaking uncontrollably, and the doctor diagnosed her with sleep deprivation. That was her final straw. I've had countless clients who haven't slept in the same bed as their spouse in years, haven't gone out after 7 p.m. in years because, maybe their child has a particular sleep prop like nursing or something that they need the mom home for, and she doesn't feel like she can leave the house because if her child wakes up, they won't go back to sleep without her in particular. I also had a client where, the sleep prop was a bottle every time he woke up. And by 2 years old, he was still drinking 8 bottles through the night, and they'd have to bring a big cooler up to their bedroom, and they were waking 8 times a night. Their son was eating bottles 8 times a night at 2 years old, and it just wasn't a healthy thing at all for anyone in their family. So like I said, I wish it was rare, but it's very, very common for sleep and sleep deprivation to really, really cripple a family and to really impact the health of mothers and their families. So I kind of want to touch on maybe some or actually, I would like to talk to you about, just kind of as a precursor, I guess, if you haven't heard some of these statistics, I'd like to talk to you about the research about how important sleep is and the effects of sleep deprivation on your health. So I have some written down here, and I'm just going to read them to you. So where do I start? I can start with physical health. So physical health. Sleep deprivation suppresses your immune system so much. According to a Carnegie Mellon University study, sleeping fewer than 7 hours triples your risk of catching a cold. So, you know, they just studied the cold, but you can imagine what the implications for any illness would be if your immune system is that suppressed. A recent study published by the journal Sleep found that just one night of sleep deprivation is linked to signs of brain tissue loss. So think about that for a minute. A University of Alabama study suggests that sleeping less than 6 hours per night increases your risk of stroke by 4 times. I could go on and on. Sleep deprivation increases your risk for diabetes. Sleep deprivation increases your risk for heart disease. Sleep deprivation, this study followed people for 14 years. They studied if your sleep went from 7 hours a night to 5 hours a night, your risk of death from all causes increased greatly. So that is health-related and accident-related, which I'm also going to get to in a moment. For your mental health, so we know a lot actually about sleep deprivation and mental health. It's sort of a chicken and egg subject. People used to think, or the researchers used to believe, that sleep deprivation was a symptom of mental illness, and now they're coming to believe that sleep deprivation can actually have a causal effect for mental illness. So it might actually be the causing factor when it comes to mental illness, or at least one of them. There's definitely not enough research done, and I can say this, I mean, I hope that the awareness becomes much more. Not enough research done about the connection between sleep deprivation and specifically postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. But just the few studies that have been done, I can tell you, it's like, yes, mothers who have children who wake, a certain time per night versus not have a way higher incidence of postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. And that correlates exactly with everything that we see in other studies about every other mental illness. And so it's very, very important for mothers, especially mothers that might be prone to postpartum depression, prone to postpartum anxiety, to take their health and their sleep habits seriously and to make sure they're getting the sleep they need. So I wanted to touch a little bit on the accident portion of this as well. I was actually just watching a documentary by National Geographic called Sleepless in America. Another sleep consultant told me about it, and it's wonderful if you have an hour to watch it. It's just on YouTube. But they have come to find out that 3 huge incidents, the Exxon oil spill, the Staten Island ferry crash, and the 3 Mile Island nuclear meltdown were all caused by sleep deprivation, a sleep-deprived person. I also talk a lot to my clients about drowsy driving. Everyone knows about driving under the influence and drunk driving and how very dangerous that is. You would never get in the car with your child when you were drunk driving, of course. And everyone will agree with that. But drowsy driving, they're just now starting to put more research into it and seeing that it's just as dangerous. So a study released by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety showed that a person who got 5 to 6 hours of sleep is 2 times more likely to crash than a person who just got 7 hours of sleep. A person who got 4 to 5 hours of sleep is 4 times more likely to crash, and that is basically on the same level as drunk driving. So, it's very, very important. You may not even feel cognitively impaired while you're sleep deprived. Some people feel like extra wired when they're sleep deprived, but it doesn't mean that it's not having those effects on your brain, on your body, and on your mental state. And it's something to really, really take seriously. So anyway, I hope that helps you to understand how important sleep is. And now I want to talk about some of the myths surrounding sleep that I think are barriers to people, particularly mothers, getting the sleep they need. So the first myth is, you can say this in a bunch of different ways, but my baby just doesn't need a lot of sleep. My baby's just not a good sleeper. My baby will grow out of these habits one day. And basically this myth just comes from maybe not a good understanding of sleep and how it works. And I want to talk about that for a minute. So basically, we all know that babies don't sleep through the night right out of the womb, of course. Babies have a stomach, I believe it's the size of a cherry when they're born. So they need more frequent feedings, particularly if you're breastfeeding. Totally get that. Babies, especially newborn babies in that fourth trimester, have legitimate needs when they wake. It could be a, wet diaper or feeding, essentially. I also want to make a small disclaimer that everything that I'm talking about applies to, healthy babies, on the growth curve, that, have no other maybe contributing factors to sleep deprivation that might be medical. So anyway, babies wake. The problem is that everybody wakes up at night for no good reason, just coming out of a light sleep cycle. You, as an adult that sleeps independently with good, healthy sleep habits, you woke 2 to 6 times last night. Nobody sleeps through the night. So you probably don't even remember that, though, because you are a good independent sleeper with good sleep habits, and you have learned the skill of independent sleep. So, when you woke up last night, you probably just kind of fluttered your eyes, turned over, fluffed your pillow, went back to sleep. And the issue that comes into babies waking, habit wakings, is that maybe they have only ever fallen asleep with something called a sleep crutch or sleep prop. That can be a pacifier, bottle, nursing, rocking, walking, bouncing, anything that they need you to get them back to sleep, even if they don't have a need like for a diaper change or feeding. So basically, if your baby falls asleep nursing, let's say nursing and rocking, you slip, we all do that. I love that meme that shows like the baby, they're trying to put the baby in the crib, but it's like dynamite or whatever. Like you're being so careful to put them in the crib that it's like dynamite because you don't want to wake them up. So, you help them fall asleep with their sleep prop, you sneak them in the crib, and then your baby is going to have a waking the next time that they come out of their light sleep cycle. Here's the issue. Imagine this just for a moment. Imagine that you fall asleep in your bed with your spouse next to you, on your pillow with your favorite blanket, and then imagine the next time you wake up, you are in your bathtub. And you'd probably freak out a little bit because that is not where you fell asleep, and that is not the situation under which you fell asleep. So you would probably freak out, go back to your bed, wake your husband up and be like, you will never guess the weirdest thing just happened to me. Well, you can imagine that if your baby falls asleep nursing in your arms, in your bed, wakes up in their crib, you know, different surface, nothing to suck on, you know, no one there. They're like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? How did I get here? And then they need their prop to get back to sleep. Even if it was just that they just came out of a light sleep cycle, they don't need anything, they're not hungry, they don't need a change. They just have never learned how to fall asleep. So if your baby has not learned this skill, then you may think, oh, my baby just doesn't need a lot of sleep. They wake 6 times a night. My baby's just not a good sleeper. But really, it's just that they have a lot of habits that might be impeding their ability to connect their sleep cycles and sleep better through the night. So most experts agree that a child is capable of sleeping through the night in between 3 to 6 months. That is not a hard and fast rule for every baby, but we know that that's true just because it is possible, because some babies, I think they're unicorn babies, do that on their own. So we know it's possible, right? The absolutely most conservative scale that a pediatrician uses for, you know, whether a baby should be waking for feeding is that they should be able to go the amount of hours correlating to the number of months they are. So if your baby is 6 months, your baby should be able to go 6 hours without a feeding, which would mean your baby would still be maybe waking up for one feeding unless they've dropped it on their own. So that is the first myth, is that my baby is just not a good sleeper or doesn't need sleep. All babies need a lot of sleep. They just might not have the skills to get that good restful sleep and might need a little help with those habits. The second myth that I feel truly keeps moms from modifying those sleep habits is that they feel, like I did, like your options are stay sleep deprived for the rest of your life or cry it out, and they're just not comfortable with that. I'm here to tell you there are seriously 100 different ways to sleep train, and there are all sorts of articles, books, sleep consultants that can help you find the method that fits your family dynamic and your comfort level and your baby's age and your baby's temperament, and you have a lot of choices. I just want you to know you have a lot of choices. The third myth that I think maybe a lot of you will relate to is that I think that postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression can sort of whisper in your ear when it comes to sleep deprivation and tell you that you are just maybe not selfless enough or maybe not strong enough to handle like a normal thing that moms go through. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. It is not weak to need a bare minimum of just healthy habits and your bare minimum needs as a human being. I also think additionally, which is sort of related, is that there's a lot of mom shaming when it comes to this subject in particular. You know, Brene Brown, she writes a lot of wonderful books. I highly recommend basically any of her books. She studies the subject of vulnerability. And in one of her books, she talks about how exhaustion and busyness is seen as a status symbol. And that I think sometimes mothers can make other mothers feel like if you are not running yourself ragged, then you are not a good mom. This is also why I have basically a personal crusade against the hashtag Team No Sleep, because to me it's like having a hashtag out there like Team No Food or Team No Hydration, like some sort of status symbol for not actually taking care of your basic needs. So I think that there's some mom shaming that goes into this subject that makes moms who truly, truly need to address their sleep deprivation feel very nervous to do so. So if you are struggling right now with sleep deprivation, here is some practical advice that I'd like to give you. So the first thing is that to keep your child on a really good schedule. That's sort of the basis for all good sleep habits. It doesn't necessarily come naturally. A lot of times you have to work at it with a lot of consistency. The first thing to do is find a wake time chart. Literally, you can go on Google right now, wake time chart. You can email me, I'll email you a wake time chart. Basically, a wake time chart will tell you the developmentally appropriate wake time that your child should have, so that they don't get overtired between naps, because counterintuitively, if they have too much time between naps, they get overtired and then it makes them fight sleep. So a good nap schedule, a good bedtime is key for good sleep habits. And babies and toddlers, they love routine. They love it. It's so good for them to know what is coming and what is normal in their little world. So a routine is so good for them. The second thing is to make your child's sleep environment very conducive to good sleep. So that is safe, dark, white noise, cool, calm. So make sure that your baby's sleeper environment is safe. Of course, make sure that it's very dark. Even the slightest amount of light can inhibit that production of melatonin that they need to get those feelings of sleepiness. So blackout shades, anything you can do to get the room very dark. You don't want it to be very stimulating. If you have one of those projectors that projects like stuff all over the walls and the ceilings, or plays a bunch of loud music or something, that might not be conducive to good sleep. But white noise is wonderful and helps so much with good sleep habits. So continuous white noise is wonderful. The third piece of advice for putting good sleep habits in place is to have a good bedtime routine. It should be about 20 minutes long. It can start however you want, bath, jammies, books, prayers, song, a final feed. It should go in the same order each time, so they know what to expect. Again, they love their habits and routines. And it gives them cues from their environment and from the actions that you're doing in your routine that it's time to go to sleep, and it'll help them to wind down. The fourth thing is help your child fall asleep without a crutch. So when it's developmentally appropriate, which is after that fourth trimester, after about 3-4 months, they have a well-developed circadian rhythm. That helps them to know that nighttime is for sleeping and daytime is for being more alert. And they're better able to learn to fall asleep on their own. And so this is the one that makes a lot of people nervous. So if you can't figure that last piece out and how you want to do it and what's best for your child, get help. Buy a book. Join a Facebook group, read an article, or reach out to a sleep consultant. Sleep consultants, almost all of them, I know I do, work remotely. You do not have to look for one in your area. You don't have to see if there's one around you. Everything that I do, the support that I give my clients, the plans that I send my clients, the work that we do is over the phone, through email, through texting. So reach out to a sleep consultant if you are feeling overwhelmed with the process and you need help. If for some reason this is not an option for you right now, any of these things, something has to give. I want to encourage you right now. If you are in the middle of sleep deprivation and you cannot sleep train right now or put some of these good habits into place, I hear a lot, like, my husband drives 30 minutes in the morning. I don't want him to fall asleep on his commute. And I get that. I totally do. But I know a lot of moms truly, truly run themselves ragged rather than ask for help. And you can tell your husband right now, some person online, Caitlin Thompson, said that he has to take half the night shift tonight so that you can at least get a short, some linked sleep cycles, maybe 3 or 4 hours, and at a time, and make sure that you get help rather than staying in this cycle of sleep deprivation. You're not selfish for needing sleep. You're actually very selfless because your family needs you to be healthy, and your children or your child needs you to be healthy. So that I'm sorry I went over a little bit. I get really passionate about this topic, but I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to ask any questions in the comments. If you ask them now, I don't think I see any right now. But I will check back and I'll try to answer as many as I can if anyone has any questions. So thank you again for joining me. I'm so thrilled to have been here to talk to you. And I want to also let you know that Tuesday, March 27th at 9 p.m. here on this Facebook page, we will be having a pelvic floor therapist and we'll be talking about pelvic floor issues with a physical therapist trained in pelvic health, which I think is incredible because I used a pelvic floor therapist when I was postpartum and it made a world of difference. She will be discussing specific issues like urinary incontinence, pelvic organ prolapse, pelvic pain during intercourse, and when to seek medical advice. So please join us for that. Again, please ask me any questions, and thank you so much again for joining me. And I hope that it encourages you to get the sleep you need. Thank you. Good night.